It began on a quiet night at the edge of Imperial space. Most days on the frontier were dull and predictable. Routine checks, long hours of silence, and endless streams of data from deep space scanners. But that night, something strange happened. A single alert tone echoed through the listening station known as Argus 9. The sound was soft at first, a simple blip in the system, but it caught the attention of one tired officer who had been staring at empty space for weeks. At first, he thought it was just another system glitch. The sensors out there were old and false readings were common. But when he looked closer, his calm expression faded. The signal wasn't random noise. It was solid, clean, and moving. He ran the data twice, then 3 times. Each time, the same result appeared. Something big was out there, bigger than a cargo ship, larger even than most battle cruisers, and it was moving toward Imperial territory. He called his supervisor, and within minutes the control room filled with voices and hurried footsteps. Everyone tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The object had no ID code, no standard transponder signal. In Imperial space, every ship, military, civilian, or transport, was required to broadcast a signal that identified who they were and where they were going. But this thing was silent, completely silent. The team checked every database they had access to. No known design matched the readings, no record of a lost ship in that region, nothing from any allied or neutral system. The room grew tense as they realized this wasn't a mistake. Something truly unknown was entering their borders. Commander Varen, the officer in charge of the station, arrived soon after. He was calm and disciplined, but even he couldn't hide the unease in his voice when he saw the data. "No signal?" he asked quietly. The technician shook his head. "Nothing, sir. It's just there." Varen leaned over the console, studying the movement. The object wasn't drifting like a piece of debris. It was accelerating, slowly at first, but with a steady rhythm like something alive. The course was deliberate, angled straight toward Imperial space. He knew what that meant. Ships didn't move like that unless they had purpose. And if it wasn't sending out a signal, it either didn't want to be found or couldn't be. Both possibilities were dangerous. He ordered the sensors to increase focus, and new streams of data began pouring in. The object's energy signature was faint, but not like anything they'd seen before. It didn't match plasma, ion, or warp drives. It was cleaner. Too clean. Like whatever was pushing it forward used energy in a way humans had never mastered. Within an hour, the Empire's Central Command received the report. What followed was silence. Then a coded message ordering Argus 9 to maintain surveillance and not make contact under any circumstances. The command's tone was measured, but everyone at the post could sense the tension behind it. By the next morning, the rumor had already spread across nearby stations. The word unknown moved fast in the Empire. Pilots whispered about secret weapons, scientists talked about forgotten civilizations, and ordinary workers just wanted to know if they were in danger. Nobody knew the truth, and that made it worse. At Argus 9, the officers kept working in shifts. Every hour, the object grew closer and faster. It had gone from moving like a drifting satellite to the speed of a battleship under full thrust, and still increasing. Commander Varen spent most of his time in the observation room, watching the faint dot on the monitor that represented the mysterious craft. He tried to stay professional, but part of him couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them back. When the object reached the halfway mark to Imperial space, the command center tried to make contact again. They sent standard greeting codes, open channel transmissions, and even light pulses directed toward its last known coordinates. No response. Not even static. It was as if the ship existed in silence by choice. That silence began to affect everyone. The more they tried to understand it, the less sense it made. Ships weren't supposed to move without some kind of trace, engine noise, radiation trail, signal reflection. But this one defied every known rule. The station's engineers argued that it had to be cloaked somehow, but even cloaking left distortions. This ship left nothing. As hours passed, the atmosphere in the control room grew heavier. The youngest crew members began checking the escape pods when no one was watching. Others stopped talking altogether, and through it all, Commander Varen stood near the window, looking out at the endless blackness of space. Somewhere out there, a silent shape was cutting through the dark, coming closer and closer with each passing hour. He recorded his first log entry that night. His voice was steady, but his words carried a quiet weight. An unidentified craft detected beyond the frontier, he said. No transponder, no communications, unknown energy pattern. Estimated size 600 meters, possibly larger. Direction inbound. Intentions unknown. He paused before finishing. If it continues on this course, it will reach the border within 72 hours. Sleep didn't come easily that night. The crew took turns resting, but most simply sat in the mess hall staring at the walls. The Empire hadn't seen anything truly foreign in over a century. They had mapped every star, conquered every rival, and built an illusion of peace around themselves. But now that peace felt fragile. The next morning brought no relief. The object's speed had doubled again. The analysts tried to predict its path, but it changed course slightly, as if avoiding the automated scanners placed along the frontier. That tiny movement confirmed what many feared. It wasn't a random object. It was aware. Commander Varan contacted Central Command again, demanding more information. The reply was short. Continue observation. Do not engage. But there was something unusual about the tone of the message. It was signed not by a standard officer, but by the Director of Imperial Defense himself. That told Varan everything he needed to know. The highest levels of government were watching this. Whatever it was, they didn't want anyone panicking. By evening, the ship's outline became visible through long-range optics. The image was blurry, distorted by distance and cosmic dust, but even then its shape looked wrong. It wasn't sleek like Imperial ships. It was rough, uneven, and scarred, as though it had traveled through places no one should go. Could it be a lost colony ship? One officer asked. The idea spread quickly, and for a brief moment people felt hope. Maybe it was human after all, some forgotten expedition returning home. But when they compared the shape to every known human design, nothing matched. Night fell again on Argus 9, and the station drifted in uneasy quiet. Outside, the stars burned as they always had, but everyone on board felt a strange pressure in the air, a sense that something enormous was approaching. Commander Varan couldn't shake the thought that the ship knew they were watching. Every time the scanners adjusted, its path shifted slightly, as if it was aware of being tracked. He didn't say this to the crew, it would only make them more anxious, but deep down he was certain. This was not just a lost vessel. It was studying them too. He looked once more at the data feed, distance decreasing, velocity increasing. No communication, no energy spike, no signal of intent, just relentless, silent movement. As the third day began, Vareen made another entry in his log. Object now approaching inner perimeter. Estimated time to crossing, 26 hours. Still no signal. No sign of life, and yet, I can't shake the feeling it's alive. He paused the recording and leaned back, his eyes fixed on the stars outside the viewport. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had left behind long ago. Fear. Not fear of attack or failure, but of the unknown. Across the Empire, few people knew what was happening, but those who did were growing restless. The silence from the frontier made them uneasy. Commanders whispered behind closed doors. Advisors argued in hidden chambers. Everyone waited for the next report from Argus 9. And out there in the darkness, the silent ship continued to move, steady, smooth, unstoppable. No words, no signal, just a growing shadow cutting through space, heading straight for the heart of the Empire. Commander Varan didn't know what would happen when it arrived. But one thing was clear. The Empire would never be the same again. When the first full report from Argus 9 reached the Imperial capital, it arrived in a sealed data capsule marked with the highest security code. Only a few people had permission to open it. Inside, the message from the frontier was short and cold. An unidentified object moving fast. No signal, no communication. Estimated arrival near Imperial space in less than 2 days. The message spread quietly among top officials, and suddenly the calm routine of the Empire began to crack. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Guards were posted at every hallway. In the heart of the palace, where the Empire's ruling council met, whispers turned into sharp voices. Some thought it was a mistake. Others feared it was something far worse. The council chamber, normally a place of controlled order, now buzzed with unease. Screens glowed with star maps, each showing the same bright dot moving steadily closer. Generals stood with crossed arms. Scientists scrolled through data in silence, and advisors spoke in hurried tones. The head of Imperial Defense tried to keep his voice calm. "We don't know what it is," he said. "But it's fast, controlled, and silent. It's not ours, and it's not any of our neighbors' designs." That last sentence hit the room hard. The Empire was surrounded by known civilizations, some friendly, some neutral, but all monitored and catalogued. Nothing moved in that region of space without the Empire knowing. The idea that something unknown could appear out of nowhere was deeply unsettling. For years, the Empire had believed it was alone at the top. It had conquered worlds, controlled trade routes, and silenced rebellions. The word unknown had vanished from their vocabulary, but now it had returned, quietly, suddenly, and with meaning. While the Council argued, orders were already spreading through the military. Patrol fleets were recalled from their routes. Shipyards began operating around the clock. Ammunition production increased quietly. It was all done under the label of training exercises so civilians wouldn't panic. But everyone in the inner circles knew this wasn't training. In small offices across the capital, officers worked without sleep. Maps of the frontier were redrawn, defense grids updated, and communication lines checked. Somewhere in the chaos, a quiet order went out to Argus 9. Keep eyes on the target at all times and report every change immediately. On the frontier, Commander Varen and his crew followed those orders. They were exhausted but alert. The unknown ship kept coming, its movements sharp and precise. No distortion, no attempt to hide. It was as if it wanted to be seen but not understood. In the capital, news of the situation had not yet reached the public. The Empire controlled information tightly, and for now only high-ranking officials and certain scientists knew the truth. Still, rumors began to spread. Freight pilots whispered about strange sensor readings. Traders claimed they saw new ships mobilizing. Some people even said an invasion was coming. In the palace, one advisor suggested sending a fleet to destroy the object before it crossed the border. The defense minister shook his head. "We don't attack what we don't understand," he said quietly. "Not yet." Another scientist argued that it might be a probe from a distant civilization, but others feared it was a weapon, one powerful enough to approach without detection or signal. As hours passed, the arguments grew more desperate. The Emperor himself listened in silence. He had ruled for decades, always confident that his empire was safe. But now, for the first time, he looked uncertain. He finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "Prepare our defenses," he said, "but do not strike. We must know what we are dealing with." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that meant one thing: full military readiness. Within hours, every major fleet in the region began to move. Communications were encrypted. Supply routes were cleared. The Empire was preparing for something it could not name. Meanwhile, on Argus 9, life became a constant routine of watching and waiting. The crew barely spoke anymore. They took turns staring at screens, tracking every small change in the object's motion. When it altered its path slightly, alarms rang across the station, but it wasn't heading toward any planet. It was moving through the empty stretch of space, as if it was following something invisible. Commander Varen wrote another report and sent it to Central Command. His message was clear: the object is aware of us. It adjusts its trajectory in response to our scans. It's watching. That last line caused a stir in the capital. If it was true, then the unknown ship was not only advanced, it was intelligent. Inside the Imperial Research Division, scientists tried to decode the data. They compared the ship's behavior with past phenomena: meteors, rogue drones, energy anomalies, but nothing matched. The ship's acceleration was too perfect, its direction too steady. Someone in the lab whispered, "It's like it knows exactly where it's going." That thought spread quickly through the upper command. Where was it going? Why was it coming toward them? And why now? The Empire had not seen a true mystery in generations. Every unknown had been conquered, every threat neutralized. Now something had appeared that ignored every rule they knew. And the most frightening part, no one could stop it. In the days that followed, people in the capital began noticing small changes. Military transports moved through the skies more often. News networks quietly avoided discussing the frontier regions. The usual flow of trade ships slowed down. Some citizens felt something was wrong, but no one dared to ask questions. Back on Argus 9, Commander Varen gathered his crew in the observation room. He looked tired but determined. "We are the eyes of the Empire," he told them. "Whatever happens, we keep watching. We record everything." The crew nodded. They understood. Even in fear, duty held them together. That night, the object did something none of them expected. It slowed down. Not a malfunction or a drift, but a deliberate deceleration. The speed dropped by half within an hour. It was as if the ship had reached the edge of something, an invisible line in space. The border of the Empire. The sensors picked up a faint pulse of energy, but it wasn't an attack. It was more like a signal, though still unreadable. No language. No pattern they could recognize. Just a single pulse, as if saying, "I'm here." Varen sent an emergency update to Central Command. The response came faster than usual. Maintain distance. Do not provoke. Reinforcements en route. But inside the Empire, the atmosphere was changing. The Emperor had ordered the First Fleet, the pride of imperial power, to take position near the frontier. Thousands of ships moved into silent formation. No one was told the real reason, but the captains knew. Something was coming. In quiet rooms across the capital, the best minds worked to predict the object's purpose. One theory said it might be a lost ship from a forgotten human expedition centuries ago. Another said it was an ancient machine awakened from deep space. A few whispered a darker thought, that it was never meant to be found. As the ship hovered near the border, its engines glowing faintly, a strange calm filled the Empire. People went about their lives unaware of how close their world was to something extraordinary. But in the military centers, everyone waited for a signal, for any sign of communication. Then just before midnight on the third day, every sensor on Argus 9 flickered at once. Screens went dark for half a second, then came back online. The object had vanished. No explosion, no trace, no debris. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Panic broke out. Technicians shouted, scanning the area again and again. Commander Varen demanded answers, but no one could explain it. The energy readings showed nothing unusual. It was as if the ship had stepped out of existence. He sent another message to Central Command, his voice heavy with disbelief. The object has disappeared. Repeating, disappeared. No wreckage, no light, nothing. For a long moment there was only silence from the capital. Then a short message arrived. Continue search. Do not assume it's gone. And so they searched. Hours passed, but the dark space remained empty. Some of the crew began to hope that whatever it was had decided to leave. Others weren't so sure. Commander Varen couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't vanished. It had simply moved somewhere they couldn't see. Far away in the Imperial Palace, the Emperor stood at his window, looking out into the night sky. Behind him, his advisors spoke softly, trying to find comfort in data and probabilities. But he wasn't listening. He knew that the unknown had already entered their world, not through weapons or war, but through fear. And as dawn broke over the capital, a single thought echoed in his mind. If something could appear from the dark without warning, it could return the same way. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday soon. Somewhere in that endless stretch of space, the unseen ship moved again, silent as ever, its course shifting ever so slightly, still heading deeper into Imperial territory. The Empire didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Would you like me to continue with Part 3 next, where the Empire secretly mobilizes fleets, civilians begin to notice strange changes, and the unknown ship finally starts reacting to Imperial probes? Days passed, but no one in the Empire could forget what had happened. The mysterious object had vanished from every radar, and still, no one knew how. On Argus 9, the crew tried to convince themselves that maybe it had moved away, maybe it wasn't a threat. But deep down, no one believed that. Something that powerful and that precise didn't just disappear. Commander Varen hadn't slept properly in days. Every night he found himself staring at the observation window, looking into the darkness where the object had last been. The stars out there looked peaceful, but to him they felt different now, like they were hiding something. The next few days were full of silent tension. The Empire's orders kept coming in. Monitor, record, stay alert. But there was a new line added to every message now. Prepare for possible reappearance. Those words alone were enough to shake the crew. It meant that even the top command expected it to come back. Meanwhile, back in the capital, the situation was changing rapidly. The military was now working in complete secrecy. Huge fleets were moving quietly across space, taking up positions near the border away from the eyes of civilians. Factories began producing drones, sensors, and weapons again, something they hadn't done in years. On the streets of the capital, people had started noticing strange changes. Fuel prices rose overnight. Certain goods were suddenly harder to find. Transport routes were being rerouted for repairs, but everyone knew something else was going on. In quiet conversations, people whispered about a secret war being planned. Some believed it was against a rebel faction. Others thought the Empire was hiding an invasion. But no one knew the truth, that it was all because of one silent, unseen ship. On August 9, Commander Varen's team picked up new readings 3 days after the disappearance. It started as a faint pulse, barely detectable. At first, they thought it was interference from the outer ring of satellites. But then the pulse repeated. Exactly every 15 seconds. The same strength, the same timing. It wasn't natural. The crew grew still as they watched the data appear on the screen. It was weak but steady. Something was there. Varen gave a simple order. Focus all sensors on the signal. As the readings came in clearer, the object reappeared. Not visually, not as an image, but as a trace on the instruments, right behind one of the Empire's observation satellites. Somehow it had moved without being detected, as if it had been hiding behind the satellite's shadow. Everyone in the control room froze. It wasn't just back, it was closer than ever. Farine immediately sent a coded message to Central Command. The response came faster this time. Hold position. Do not engage. Reinforcements inbound. But he could tell that the object wasn't waiting for anyone's permission. Its movements were smooth, deliberate. Slowly, it began to change course again, heading directly toward one of the Empire's patrol zones. Central Command ordered a probe launch, a small unmanned ship equipped with high-resolution scanners. It was fast, light, and designed to get close to unknown objects without being noticed. The crew on Argus 9 watched as the probe left its docking bay and began moving toward the mysterious target. Minutes turned into hours. The probe transmitted data continuously. Distance, radiation, temperature, all normal. Then suddenly everything went silent. The signal was gone. The room fell into stunned silence. No explosion, no interference. The probe had simply vanished, just like the ship had before. Varen stared at the blank screen, his hands clenched at his sides. It's not just avoiding us, he said quietly. It's watching what we send. The scientists on Argus 9 replayed the last transmission frame by frame. For one brief moment, just a fraction of a second, the image showed a dark shape blocking the stars. No light, no markings, just an outline, smooth and curved. Then the feed cut. They sent the data to the capital immediately. Within minutes, the Imperial Research Division had it on every screen. Analysts zoomed in, enhanced the image, adjusted the filters, but the result stayed the same. A shadow that didn't belong there. Inside the palace, the Emperor was briefed again. The lead scientist summarized everything in one line. It's intelligent and it knows we're here. That statement changed everything. The Empire could no longer treat it like a random object. It was something alive, or at least guided by something alive. And it was operating with purpose. New orders spread through the military. Activate border defenses, maintain blackout conditions, and prepare for potential contact. Still, they avoided using one word, enemy. No one wanted to call it that yet. Not until they were sure. On Argus 9, the crew tried to keep working, but the tension was unbearable. Every noise, every flicker of the screen made them jump. One of the younger technicians whispered to a colleague, "What if it's not a ship at all? What if it's something else, something that isn't meant to be understood?" Varen overheard but said nothing. He didn't want to add to their fear. Instead, he reviewed every piece of data again and again, looking for something, anything that could explain how the object was moving. But the answers weren't there. The laws of physics said it shouldn't be possible. Yet it was happening. That night, the unknown ship moved again. Slowly at first, then faster. Its path changed, angling toward a nearby cluster of Imperial observation buoys. Varine realized what it was doing. It was testing them. He ordered all buoys in that region to go into passive mode, hoping to hide their signals, but it was too late. The object passed directly through the network, and one by one, the buoys began to fail. Not explode, not burn. They simply shut down. Within seconds, a third of the Empire's sensor grid in that area went dark. The blackout stretched across millions of kilometers of space. For the Empire, that meant one thing. They were blind in that sector. Back in the capital, the news hit the command center like a thunderclap. The Empire's top generals demanded action. "We cannot let this continue," one said. "We have to respond." But the Emperor remained calm. "Respond with what?" he asked. We don't know what it is or what it wants. If it wanted to destroy us, it already could have. No one had an answer to that. Meanwhile, Argus 9 was struggling to stay connected. The blackout was expanding. Communication delays grew longer. And through it all, the mysterious ship kept moving, slowly, methodically, deeper into Imperial space. Commander Varen began recording his private logs again. "This is beyond our understanding," he said quietly into the recorder. "It's not an attack. It's something else. I think it's observing us, measuring how we react." He didn't know who would ever hear those words, but speaking them made him feel less alone. By the fourth day, the ship had reached a point no one expected. It was now close enough that several civilian freighters picked up its faint shadow while passing near the frontier. That was the first real proof the public got that something unusual was happening. Within hours, rumors exploded across the networks. Some claimed it was an alien ark. Others said it was a secret Imperial project gone wrong. A few believed it was a sign from beyond, a message from lost explorers of old Earth. The government tried to control the panic by releasing a short statement. "Unidentified object under observation. No threat detected." But the words only made people more curious. In markets, in schools, and in homes, everyone talked about the same thing: the unknown ship. Back on Argus 9, sleep became rare. The crew's nerves were stretched thin. The sound of the station's ventilation system became unbearable, the silence between transmissions heavier than ever. Still, they kept watching. Then, late one night, a faint vibration ran through the hull. It wasn't an impact or explosion, just a low, distant hum. The lights flickered for a second. The control panels glowed faintly blue, as if touched by some invisible wave. Varen looked out through the main viewport, and for the first time he saw it. Not through a camera, not on a screen, but with his own eyes. A shape enormous and quiet, moving across the stars like a shadow swallowing light. It wasn't sleek or shining like Imperial ships. It looked old, ancient even. Its surface was uneven, almost organic, like something grown rather than built. Lines of faint light ran along its sides, glowing softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Everyone on the station stood frozen. For a moment, the ship stopped, hanging in the darkness. Then a small beam of light flickered from its hull, not toward the station, but into open space. It formed strange patterns, shapes that looked like language but weren't any known code. "Is it trying to communicate?" one of the officers whispered. No one answered. They could only watch as the lights danced across the void, fading slowly into nothing. Then, as silently as it had appeared, the ship turned, changing direction slightly, moving deeper into the Empire's territory once again. Commander Varen didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was soft but steady. "Whatever it is," he said, "it's not just passing through. It's choosing where to go." He didn't know what the next day would bring, but he was certain of one thing: the Empire was no longer alone in the dark. Something had returned, and it was only beginning to show its purpose. Would you like me to continue with Part 4 next, where the Empire attempts direct contact? The first probe vanishes mysteriously, and the unknown ship finally sends its first deliberate signal. The news of the mysterious ship's reappearance reached the Imperial capital faster than expected. What began as quiet discussions behind sealed doors had now turned into full emergency sessions. The Emperor, High Command, scientists, and advisors all gathered in one massive chamber surrounded by flickering holoscreens. Every display showed the same image: a dark, ghost-like ship moving through the blackness of space. It wasn't just a rumor anymore. It was real. The Empire had to face it. For days, Argus 9 had been feeding the capital live data. Every scan, every faint pulse of energy, every shift in movement was recorded. Still, no one had been able to understand what it was doing. It had ignored every attempt to communicate. No response to radio waves, no reaction to light signals, no sign that it even recognized the Empire's presence. And yet, somehow, it always seemed to move with purpose, as if it already knew exactly where it was going. Commander Varen hadn't left his post since the sighting. His eyes were tired, but his mind was sharp. He kept replaying the moment when the strange ship had sent that flicker of light into the darkness. It wasn't random, he was sure of that. The patterns had rhythm, almost like a message, but not one any human could read. In the capital, the Empire's best linguists and code analysts were working day and night to decode that light signal. They compared it to every known communication method, Binary, Morse, frequency patterns, but nothing matched. Some believed it wasn't meant to be read by humans at all. Meanwhile, fear began to spread through the empire. Even though officials tried to hide it, rumors had escaped the walls of the palace. People whispered in markets, in transport stations, even in schools. They said the empire had found something ancient, something not human. To calm the population, the empire announced that it was simply investigating a foreign probe. But those who had seen the leaked images knew better. That ship was too large, too deliberate. At Argus 9, a strange silence hung in the air. Every creak of metal, every flicker of the console lights felt like a warning. The crew barely spoke anymore. Some had started recording goodbye messages to their families just in case. Then, one morning, the unknown ship slowed down again. The speed readings dropped sharply. It had stopped in deep space, completely motionless. It didn't orbit a planet or star. It simply hovered there as if waiting. The moment the data reached the capital, the council gathered again. A decision had to be made. The Emperor listened quietly while the officers argued. Some said to send a fleet immediately, to surround it, study it, or even destroy it before it got closer. Others said that would be a mistake. No one knew what kind of power it had. Finally, one voice in the room spoke with calm certainty. We should attempt direct contact. If it's intelligent, it will respond. If it's hostile, we'll know soon enough, the Emperor agreed. The order was simple. Send a new probe, larger than before, equipped with advanced scanners and a direct communication array. Its only purpose was to establish contact. On Argus 9, Commander Varen received the new orders and began preparations. The crew loaded the probe with data, messages, and greeting codes in every known language. It was the Empire's way of saying, "We come in peace." As the countdown began, tension filled the control room. When the launch sequence reached 0, the small ship detached from the station and glided silently into the dark. The entire crew watched as the probe's tiny light faded into the distance, heading straight for the unknown vessel. Hours passed. The probe transmitted data continuously. Distance decreasing, radiation stable, no sign of interference. Everything seemed normal. Then suddenly the signal began to distort. The screens flickered. The audio feed filled with strange static. Not random noise, but patterns. Rhythmic, pulsing patterns. The same kind of pulse the ship had sent before. Varen leaned closer to the speaker. "Can we clean that signal?" he asked. The technician shook his head. "It's not interference," she said softly. "It's replying." The realization hit everyone at once. The ship was responding. For the next several minutes, the probe systems kept receiving the strange pulse. Each time it matched the exact rhythm of the light signal from days earlier. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the feed went silent. The probe was gone. No explosion, no trace. Just gone, erased from every scanner. Panic filled the control room. Varen ordered a full scan of the region, but the space around the unknown ship was empty. It hadn't moved. It hadn't fired. It had simply made the probe disappear. Back in the capital, the command center went into chaos. Generals shouted, scientists argued, and communication officers tried to re-establish the link. But it was hopeless. The ship had responded once and then silenced them again. "What does it want?" One advisor asked aloud, his voice shaking. No one could answer. Commander Varen recorded a message for the Empire, his voice firm despite his exhaustion. "We attempted peaceful contact. The probe was lost. No signs of aggression, but the object displays total control of space around it. It reacts to us selectively." That last word, selectively, echoed in the report room back on the Capitol. It meant the ship wasn't acting randomly. It was making choices. It knew what it was doing. The Emperor called for another meeting. "If it wanted to destroy us," he said quietly, "it could have done so already. Yet it doesn't attack. It observes. Maybe it's testing us." The idea chilled everyone. What if they weren't the ones studying it, but the ones being studied? That night, while the Empire's fleets tightened their formations and defense systems hummed to life, something else happened on Argus 9. The lights flickered again, faintly this time. The station's systems picked up a new signal, but not from the ship. From their own data archives, files were being accessed remotely, opened one by one, as if someone or something was reading them. The technicians froze. "Sir, it's inside our network," one whispered. "It's not hacking, it's browsing." Commander Varen's heart pounded. He knew there was no way any signal could have reached their internal systems without direct connection, yet the evidence was right there on the screen. The unknown ship wasn't sending random energy anymore. It was looking into their systems, studying the Empire through their own data. He sent an immediate distress call to Central Command. The message was short: "We are compromised. Unknown ship is interacting with our systems. It knows we're watching." The response came within minutes. "Cut all outgoing transmissions. Switch to manual systems only. Do not attempt to respond." The crew obeyed. One by one, they shut down the automated networks. For the first time in years, the station went completely offline, running only on manual power. The room felt smaller, darker, and every sound seemed louder. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the strange interference stopped. The light stabilized. The ship out there remained motionless. Whatever it had been doing, it was finished. Commander Varen stood in silence, staring out into the black. "It came to see who we are," he whispered. "And now it knows." Meanwhile, on the Imperial capital, scientists analyzed the short-lived network breach. The results were unlike anything they had ever seen. The data wasn't stolen. It had been copied and reorganized, as though something was trying to understand it, not use it. The pattern it left behind was complex but familiar, like a human thought recorded in light. It was as if the ship had tried to learn from them. The Emperor listened to the report without a word. When it ended, he simply said, "Prepare for contact. It's not done with us." Back on Argus 9, the crew received new orders: stay on station, monitor everything, and prepare for another signal. No one argued, but fear hung heavy in the air. They all knew something big was coming. At 200 hours, the station's long-range sensors detected another surge. The unknown ship had begun to glow faintly again, lines of soft blue light running across its surface. The glow pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Then came the signal, this time visible, not digital. A massive burst of light spread through space, forming patterns so vast that nearby ships could see them with the naked eye. It wasn't random this time. It was structured, almost like an ancient form of writing. For 30 seconds, the Empire's entire sensor grid lit up with data. Every scanner, every observatory, every station received the same burst. And then, after those 30 seconds, everything went dark. When power returned, every Imperial database showed the same coordinates, far beyond the mapped regions of the galaxy. A single message decoded from the light patterns read, "We have returned." No one in the Empire could understand what it meant. Returned from where? Returned for what? On Argus 9, Commander Varen sat quietly at his console, staring at those words. He didn't speak. He didn't move. All he could think was that maybe, just maybe, this ship wasn't from an alien world after all. Maybe it was human. And if that was true, then the question wasn't who they were, but what they had become. The unknown ship had stopped moving. After weeks of watching, waiting, and fearing, it finally stood still, like a dark, silent mountain hanging in the sky. Every sensor in the Empire was pointed at it. Every satellite, every telescope, and every command screen across the military flickered with the same image. It wasn't just an object anymore. It was the center of everyone's attention, the heart of a mystery that no one dared to touch. Commander Varen stared at the readings for hours. The ship was motionless, but it wasn't dead. It gave off a faint pulse, not like a signal, but like a heartbeat, a slow repeating rhythm, one that felt almost alive. The Empire's top scientists said it wasn't mechanical. It was something different, something they couldn't define. No one wanted to make the next move. High Command argued for days. Some said they should attack before it did. Others warned that provoking it could bring disaster. And then there were those who believed it wasn't a threat at all. It was an opportunity, a chance to discover something beyond human understanding. Finally, the Emperor made the call. A fleet would approach, not to destroy but to observe, to stand close enough to see the truth. At Argus 9, the order came through quietly. Varen and his team were chosen to lead the first phase of observation. His ship, the Dawnlight, was equipped with heavy scanners and reinforced shields just in case. As the crew prepared for departure, silence filled the hangar. Everyone moved carefully, speaking in low tones, as if afraid the unknown ship could hear them even from afar. When the Dawnlight launched, its engines burned softly against the void. The unknown vessel hung in the distance like a frozen shadow, massive and still, The closer they got, the stranger it became. The hull wasn't metal. It looked almost organic. Layers of dark material shimmered faintly, reflecting light in strange, uneven waves. It was like the surface was breathing. "Distance 10,000 kilometers, the navigator whispered. Varen watched through the front glass. "Hold this range," he said quietly. "No sudden moves." Every few seconds, the scanners sent back new data. The ship was cold but not dead. It had energy, steady, deep, and hidden beneath the surface. There were no windows, no visible engines, no signs of life. Just endless patterns carved into its surface like writing that no one could read. When they circled around the ship's side, the sensors picked up something strange, a symbol etched across the hull. It was faint, almost invisible, but when light hit it at the right angle, the markings became clear. The symbol wasn't alien. It was human. For a long moment, no one spoke. "Are we sure?" the technician asked softly. Varen nodded. "Run it through the old archives." The computer compared it to every known insignia from human history. The result came back within seconds. The markings matched an ancient exploration program, one that existed long before the Empire was founded. It was from an era so old most people thought it was only legend. Varen leaned forward, whispering under his breath. "That's impossible. Those ships never came back." Back on the capital, the discovery spread like wildfire through the highest ranks. The unknown ship wasn't alien, it was human-built. But from where and how? The old program had vanished centuries ago, lost beyond the edge of known space. No one expected any of their vessels to ever return. The scientists reviewed every detail from the Dawnlight's feed. The symbols, the structure, even the material matched descriptions from ancient archives. Yet this ship was far larger, far more advanced. It wasn't just an old relic, it had evolved. Meanwhile, out near the frontier, Varen's crew continued their study. They tried to scan deeper, but every time they increased power, the ship reacted. The faint blue light along its hull brightened slightly, as if warning them. The crew immediately pulled back, afraid to push it too far. Hours turned into days, and still there was no communication. But then something new happened. During the third day of orbit, the ship released a small object barely larger than a drone. It floated out slowly, stopping a few hundred meters from the Dawnlight. The object didn't emit any signal, yet the ship's scanners showed it was alive with data, streaming something directly toward them. "Should we intercept it?" asked the officer beside Varen. "No," he said firmly. "Let's see what it does." The crew watched as the small object rotated once, then projected a beam of light into space. The beam didn't spread, it formed an image, a holographic shape hovering in the dark. The image was of a human face, blurry, distorted, but unmistakably human. The room went silent, then came the sound. A faint, broken voice filled the speakers, half static, half words. "Return, mission complete. The stars are not empty." The transmission looped several times, repeating the same few words, each time clearer. The voice was old, weary, but human. It didn't sound like a recording. It sounded like someone trying to speak from far, far away. Varen's hands tightened on the console. He sent the recording to command instantly. Within minutes, the Capital Science Council had it. They ran analysis after analysis, but one thing was certain. The voice pattern matched the DNA data of humans. The Empire erupted in confusion. News leaked again, and this time it couldn't be silenced. People all across the world began to talk about the lost explorers. Some said they had gone too far into space and found something that changed them. Others believed they had discovered life beyond the stars and brought it back. No one knew the truth. Inside the Dawnlight, Varen couldn't stop thinking about the words. The stars are not empty. What did that mean? Was it a warning or a message of discovery? The next morning, the small floating object vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving behind only silence. But before disappearing, it sent one last burst of light toward the Empire's systems. When decoded, it revealed another set of coordinates, deep beyond any mapped space, far beyond the Empire's reach. Back on the capital, the Emperor stared at the coordinates. They led to a place outside known regions, an area long considered unreachable because of gravitational storms and radiation belts. No ship had ever returned from there. The Emperor turned to his council. "Whatever lies there, they came back from it," he said quietly. "We must know what they found," but others disagreed. Some feared following the trail would bring danger upon them all. The unknown ship hadn't shown aggression yet, but what if that changed? While the council debated, something unexpected happened on Argus 9. The ship that had been silent for so long began to move again, but not toward the Empire. It turned slowly, aligning itself with the same coordinates it had sent. Then, without warning, it accelerated. The speed was unimaginable, faster than any known drive. In seconds, it was gone. Baron watched the last trace of it vanish from his radar. The silence that followed was heavy, almost painful. Everyone in the room felt the same mix of awe and fear. The Empire had witnessed something that defied everything they believed about their own history. The ship wasn't an alien threat, it was a message from humanity's past. But it also left behind a bigger question. What had happened to those who built it? In the following days, the Empire released an official statement, calling it a classified exploration encounter. They tried to control the story, but it was too late. People had already seen the recordings. Across the colonies, whispers turned into belief. Some said the lost explorers had found a way to go beyond time itself. Others believed they had discovered something so powerful that they could no longer remain human. Commander Varan was called back to the capital for questioning. During his report, he described everything: the shape of the ship, the message, the light, and the voice. But when the Emperor asked what he believed it all meant, Varan hesitated before answering. "I don't think they're lost," he said slowly. "I think they went somewhere we're not ready to go yet, and now they've come back to remind us that space isn't ours alone." The Emperor didn't respond. He only nodded and dismissed him. That night, as Varan returned to his quarters, he looked up at the stars through the viewing dome. They looked the same as they always had: cold, distant, beautiful. But now he couldn't help but feel watched. Somewhere out there, that ship was moving again, traveling back to wherever it came from, and maybe one day it would return. When it did, the Empire would have to face a truth it wasn't ready for: that the greatest mystery in the universe wasn't aliens or war or technology. It was humanity itself. The unknown ship had come not to threaten, but to remind them. The stars weren't empty. The universe wasn't silent. And perhaps somewhere far beyond their reach, a part of humanity had found something extraordinary and was waiting for the rest of them to catch up. The Empire was no longer calm. Ever since the mysterious ship disappeared, nothing had felt normal. People everywhere, scientists, soldiers, even ordinary citizens, were filled with curiosity and fear. The words left behind by the ship, "We have returned," still echoed across every world. Some thought it meant hope, others thought it was a warning. But no one could ignore it. Commander Varan had returned to the capital, but he wasn't at peace. He couldn't stop thinking about that last message, those strange coordinates, and the way the ship had accelerated, as if it knew exactly where it was going. He often sat alone in the quiet observation dome, staring into the stars, wondering what could exist in that uncharted region of space, the place the old explorers had vanished into. The Emperor finally made his decision. The Empire couldn't sit back anymore. They would send an expedition beyond the frontier to follow those coordinates and uncover the truth. It was a dangerous mission, but it was necessary. The unknown couldn't remain unknown forever. Baron was chosen to lead the mission. He didn't hesitate. Even though part of him feared what they might find, another part of him burned with curiosity. The ship that had returned was human-made. That meant there was a story behind it, a connection that went back further than the Empire's own history. He wanted to know what those ancient explorers had found, and why they had come back now. The journey began in silence. The fleet was small, 3 ships in total built for long-distance travel and survival in hostile regions. As they left the last beacon of Imperial space behind, the stars ahead grew darker. The light from known worlds faded, replaced by endless emptiness. Days turned into weeks. The further they went, the stranger the readings became. Radiation levels rose and fell for no reason. Time distortions appeared in small pockets, making their instruments behave unpredictably. It was like space itself was unstable, bending and shifting around them. Varan kept his crew calm. "Stay focused," he would say. "We go where they went. We find what they found." After nearly a month, they reached the edge of a massive gravitational field, the same region where hundreds of ships had disappeared over the centuries. It was filled with swirling energy clouds, glowing faintly like storms trapped in space. Even at a distance, it was intimidating. "This is where they went," Varan said quietly. The fleet stopped, scanning every direction. Deep inside the storm, there were faint signals. Metal signatures, possibly ships. Some could be wreckage from past expeditions. Others could be something else. "Prepare the shields," Varen ordered. "We're going in." As they entered the storm, light bent and twisted around them. Space seemed to shimmer like water, and strange vibrations passed through the hull. For a few minutes, no one spoke. They all knew they were crossing into a place where no human had ever returned from. Suddenly, the storm cleared. Before them stretched a wide, calm region of space, a hidden valley beyond the chaos. And in the middle of it floated something vast and breathtaking. It wasn't one ship. It was hundreds. Massive vessels, connected together in a circular formation glowing faintly with a blue-white light. They were old but not dead. Their designs matched human engineering from centuries ago, but they had been changed, rebuilt with technology far beyond anything the Empire had. The fleet fell silent. They were staring at a city made of ships. "Are we seeing this right?" one officer whispered. "Yes," Varen said softly. "This is them. The lost explorers." As they moved closer, signals began to appear, faint, rhythmic pulses like heartbeats. The scanners detected life, but not in a normal way. The energy patterns weren't biological, yet they weren't purely mechanical either. It was something in between. Then, as they approached the center of the formation, one of the massive ships came to life. Lights rippled across its surface. A single calm voice echoed through every channel in the fleet. "You came after us." It was human, clear, strong, and filled with emotion. Varen froze. "Identify yourself," he said quickly. "This is Commander Varen of the Imperial Fleet. Who are you?" The voice responded, "We are what you left behind. The first travelers. The ones who crossed the boundary." The crew exchanged shocked glances. It was true. These were the explorers who had vanished generations ago. But how could they still be alive? Varen asked, "What happened to you? How are you still here?" The voice paused for a moment as if searching for words. "We went further than anyone had gone. We found a place where time doesn't move the same. We discovered a way to exist beyond the limits of flesh. We became something new. Part human, part light, part memory." A deep silence filled the bridge. No one could fully understand what that meant. The voice continued, calm and almost sorrowful. "We tried to return once before, but your ancestors weren't ready. They saw us as a threat. We waited until your world reached the stars again, until you could understand what we had become." Varen swallowed hard. "You've changed," he said quietly. "Yes," the voice replied. "We left humanity behind, but we never forgot where we came from." Suddenly, a projection appeared before their ship, a figure made of light. It looked human, but its form shifted gently, glowing like energy held together by thought. The face was calm, peaceful, and filled with something strange. A kind of sadness mixed with understanding. "We came back," it said softly, "because your empire has forgotten what it means to explore. You built walls in the stars instead of bridges. You claimed space as if you owned it. But the universe doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to those who seek to understand it." Varen couldn't speak. His crew watched in silent awe as the glowing figure slowly faded. Then, from the massive circle of ancient ships, a beam of light spread outward, forming symbols in space, coordinates, knowledge, patterns of stars that didn't exist in any Imperial maps. "This is what we found," the voice said. "Worlds beyond the edge, places where life is born from light itself. You can go there now, if you have the courage. But remember, understanding is not control. The moment you try to own the universe, it will turn away from you." With that, the lights began to dim. One by one, the ancient ships went quiet again, their glow fading into the dark. The projection disappeared and the voice was gone. Varen and his crew sat in stunned silence. They had just spoken to the lost humans, beings who had gone beyond what anyone thought possible. They weren't gods or machines. They were explorers who had evolved into something new. Back in the Empire, when the data finally reached the capital, the Emperor and his council listened in disbelief. The discovery changed everything. The Empire could no longer claim to be the peak of human progress. There were others, older, wiser, and far beyond them. Some saw it as hope, a sign that humanity could become more than flesh and steel. Others saw it as a threat, proof that the unknown was not something to be conquered but respected. Commander Varen returned from the mission a changed man. He had looked into the eyes of what humanity could become. He carried with him the coordinates the beings had given, maps to uncharted worlds, places that pulsed with strange energy and light. But he also carried a warning. He recorded it in his final report. They told us that discovery must come with humility. If we forget that, if we turn exploration into conquest, then the stars themselves will reject us. Years later, when Vereen retired, he often visited the same observation dome where he had once stared at the stars in silence. He would sit there for hours remembering the light, the voice, and the calm presence of those who had gone beyond. Sometimes late at night, he would look up and think he saw a faint shimmer among the stars, a flicker of blue light that appeared for a moment and then vanished. And each time he saw it, he smiled softly and whispered, "They're still out there." Because deep down, he knew that the lost explorers hadn't disappeared forever. They had simply gone ahead, waiting for the rest of humanity to finally catch up. And when that day came, the universe would open once more, not for empires or armies, but for people who were ready to seek, to learn, and to understand. The Empire's greatest discovery wasn't a weapon or a new world. It was the reminder that the stars were never empty, and that somewhere far beyond their reach humanity's story was still being written.